Hello, hello, hello. This is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. And again, as I always say, we have another phenomenal guest. But listen to me. Today is just not another phenomenal guest, right? It's not just someone that we talk about. This is a person who has changed the industry in the world, I should say. I was going to say the music industry, but I was going to say the world because everyone loves music. But how do you discover talent? Well, I'm going to tell you something. This next guest, he didn't have to go too far to discover this talent. See, because the talent was right there in his house. The talent was his own kids. This man had the ability to see the beautiful talent within his own kids, and he helped develop them. Now, you hear me. I'm talking about developing your kids. But this is not just regular development. We're talking about Grammy Award winning, huh? We're talking about Destiny's Child. You heard of them, right? Beyonce. You heard of her, right? Solange. You heard of her, right? See, we're talking to the father of Beyonce. We have him on the show today. Now, we're talking to him as just a father or celebrity. And we're talking to him as a human being. See, because we all live life. And sometimes being diagnosed with cancer can be overwhelming. And it doesn't matter who you are. You can be rich, poor, black, white, young, or old. Cancer doesn't discriminate. So I'm going to tell you, it is my honor, it is my privilege to introduce our next guest today, Mr. Mathew Knowles.
Hey, Kenny, thank you so much for the introduction, man. Looking mighty spiffy in that blue and white. I was telling you, I love that blue and white. I wear it a lot.
Oh,
So
thank you.
thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, Matthew, it's a privilege. And I don't want to waste any time. You know, Matthew, you have done some amazing things in life and a lot of accomplishments. And a lot of us sometimes we have ideas, but we don't know how to make them come to fruition. And you are a person of a man of action. Not only do you have an idea or a dream, you know how to carry it through to make it a success. So that in itself is a wonderful gift from God, really. But you know, Matthew, listening to um, your story, it resonates. You know, not too many men get diagnosed with cancer. So talk to me a little bit about who you are and how that your diagnosis came about.
Yeah, you're right, Kenny. Not too many men get diagnosed with breast cancer, male breast cancer. I think I have to give some context for a few minutes. I did 20 years of diagnostic imaging. Most people aren't aware. Um, I started out in 1978 with Xerox Corporation and moved quickly up the ranks. Only sold copiers for a year, was in the engineering division, and got this quantum leap to the medical division of Xerox. So picture now we're talking 1980, and zero radiography was the leading modality for breast cancer. Go figure. That's what I sold for 8 years, and gratefully was the number one sales rep worldwide for most of those years.
Wow.
Then the president of Xerox Medical went to Philips Medical, and I was fortunate to be the first or one of the first blacks in America to sell MRI and CT scanners. And in '88, that was first generation technology. So you had to also explain the technology, how it works, spinning protons and precessing and all those things that happens with our body. And then ended my career as a neurosurgical rep with Johnson and Johnson. So I had some knowledge base. Fast forward to 6 years ago, and I'm one day looking at my T-shirt, and I imagine a white sheet of paper. You have a red pen. You put 10 dots on it. That's what the inside of my t-shirt looked like one day. I didn't think anything about it until the second day, Kenny, and I asked my wife, I said, well, Gina, did you get some new t-shirts from seeing these dots? Like, is it thread? She was like, it's, interesting to say that because for the last few days, when I clean the sheets, there have been these little dots that look like blood. And from my training in the 80s, I knew that nipple discharge, and I'll just say it, is a serious sign of male breast cancer. And I called my doctor and shared with him that I like to get a mammogram, and he kind of laughed and said, "Look, I've 40 years, I've never had a man call me and say he want to get a mammogram." I said, "You got to trust me on this one." Got the mammogram, and then had surgery, had a mastectomy, and then something happened in surgery. Right before surgery, my surgeon said, "There's one exam that I haven't done pre-op. We'll just wait. Matter of factly, we'll just wait till surgery, and it's a simple, and we'll get the results back. But I know you're fine." And I'm saying to myself, "Wait a minute, only 1% of men get male breast cancer. You telling me on a test of, I'm gonna be fine? I've already really beat the odds. I don't want to beat them again." And sure enough, I get a call from his office. He needs to see you, and when your surgeon calls you after surgery, says they need you to come to the office. That's normally not a good sign. As soon as I hit the door, apologetic. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So I got a genetic test doing surgery, and it came back that I was BRCA2 variant. And for those of you that don't know what that means when we look at our chromosomes, our X and Y chromosomes, that for a man, if you're BRCA2 variant, then that means I have a higher risk of melanoma, pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, and male breast cancer. And for women, it's cervical and breast cancer if you're BRCA2 positive. So I was upset with that for a moment, because had I known that, had that information, I would have got a double mastectomy without I wouldn't put any risk with that. But today I get all my annual tests. I get I love it MRI units because I sold them, so I don't get claustrophobic, and I once a year get pancreatic and prostate and PSA tests, and that's how we got here.
Yeah. Tell me, what was your thoughts when you first got diagnosed after they gave you that news? What was your thoughts initially?
Well, initially there was, as anywhere, want to hear those words, "You have cancer." Those words stop you. They make you pause for a minute. They make you, lose your breath for a minute. The question is, am I gonna live? That's becomes the first. Am I gonna die from this? What is it gonna look like? What is the process? But again, because I had sold mammography equipment and had that knowledge, I knew once I was diagnosed 1A, that I had a real chance of survival, like 99% survival rate when you're diagnosed stage 1A. And gratefully, I heard in your introduction of yourself that you understand radiation therapy. Fortunately, because I was diagnosed early, I only had to take tamoxifen once a day for 5 years. Some minor side effects, which certainly were that. And, I say today I'm cancer-free today. And I always say today. I don't say I'm cancer-free. I'm cancer-free today, because you and I both know That's a very, curious disease, cancer,
Yes.
and it can come back.
Yes. Getting a cancer diagnosis, Matthew, tell me, how has that changed your perspective in life? You know, before the diagnosis, what we kind of get an idea, but let's hear from you. Before the diagnosis, what was life like for you?
Oh, it was about more and more, accomplishing more and more, doing more and more. Um, and I say this often, you know, after the cancer diagnosis, and we found out we live in Orange County. We didn't know that, minutes away from each other, and I look forward to seeing you. Uh, but after that diagnosis, I began to see things and see life so differently. I used to not see the beauty of it, even where we live, the mountains and the ocean. And I didn't look at trees, or I didn't take walks and look at sunsets. Those things never occurred to me. I was so, trying to accomplish more and more and more that it's made me look out the window, stand still, look out the window, and begin to see life differently, and enjoy the things that I never nature was never a thing. I'm a country boy that grew up in Alabama. Like nature, I wanted to run from nature. I lived on a dirt road for a while. In the country, I had nature. No, but it changed me,
Yes.
and it made me. It also changed my marriage. I was a newlywed about 4 or 5 years. Unfortunately, in January of that year, 6 years ago, 2019, my wife's sister, who was in her 40s with 3 young kids, died of breast cancer. And imagine 6 months later, your husband is now diagnosed with male breast cancer. You just lost your 40-some-year-old sister. It really brought our marriage together in such a special way, uh, that we're best of friends. We laugh every night. We enjoy living. Uh, it brought us so close together.
And that was going to be my question, Matthew. Is bring when a diagnosis like that happens, it can go one or two ways. And it sounds like you and your wife took a closer bond to each other, and I love that. I love that part. How was there any struggles that you both went through dealing with that? Because I mean that's hard. Your sister dies from cancer, and then now your husband has that. You know, you can only imagine the worst sometimes, right? So
Right.
how did you deal with some of that struggle?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it, Kenny, because remember, it was June, 6 months before COVID. And you knew how frightened the world was about COVID. Here I am, a Black man just diagnosed with cancer during COVID. So I remember we were then living in Houston, and I didn't want my wife to go outside the door. I took my temperature, and I'm not exaggerating, maybe 15 times a day, my oxygen meter on my finger. Um, man, I'm scared about dying from not cancer, but from COVID, to the point that I was having anxiety attacks. So eventually, fortunately, years ago, I found a Black male therapist. I called my therapist. I hadn't talked to him in years, and I said, "Hey, man, I know something's not right." And we went through a number of sessions together, and finally he said, "Look, Matthew, you never dealt with your fear of dying." And that's what you're going. Then he shared with me, whenever there's a disaster, things that you haven't dealt with in your life are multiplied 25x. So going through that process of COVID was a real challenge for me because Black folks, we were dying left and right, and we didn't understand it.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot on the plate there, Matthew. You're trying to deal with the complications and the stress of cancer, and then you top that on with the worldwide COVID epidemic there. It's a lot to handle. So so tell me, during that process, how were you able to find balance and to be able to at least get past some of the limiting beliefs that come along with that?
Well, I believe knowledge is power.
Mm,
I really do, and I unfortunately, I'm fortunate that was able to really build a strong team around me. I have a very dear friend that's heads up the American uh, Heart Association. That was my first call. Helped me build my team. Uh, got my oncologist uh, part of the team, who's Susan Domchek, who's a world-renowned University of Pennsylvania oncologist, and we put together with my therapist and spiritual help, and put together that team. You have to put a winning team together with this, because you said something earlier that's so key. Research has shown that 30% of cancer deaths are based on isolation.
mm.
People isolate once they're diagnosed. They don't want anybody to know. They want to be secretive about it, rather than, hey, being open about it. That isolation, it really takes an effect, and that's another reason why I talk
Yes.
about it. So hopefully people can feel a comfort level of saying, "Yeah, I have that too."
Matthew, one of the biggest things that going through cancer is a lot of times people blame themselves. Maybe it's the things that I did in my life, or maybe it's the foods that I eat. Diet always comes up as something that's important. How does that resonate with you when it comes to dieting and being diagnosed with cancer?
Well, when I was diagnosed, that became very, very important. Understanding the overall. I talked about the mental aspect. I talked about how I look at nature. But I'm glad we're talking about also diet, because for me, I literally have lost around 40 pounds since I've been diagnosed. One thing I've learned: cancer loves obesity. Cancer loves obesity. And so what do I do different today? It's just not the mental aspect of looking at nature. When I'm walking, I now walk every chance I can outside 2 miles a day, a brisk walk. I do 2 miles, and I got it down to 40 minutes now. That's moving rather fast for a walk. And I tell you, I've had 2 knee replacements. I was an athlete. I've had 5 basketball surgeries, but I got my knees, especially after being diagnosed with my second knee, so that I could exercise more, because it's really important. Diet is really important. Exercise and fitness. You'll hear that if you're a cancer survivor. You've heard that, how important that it is what we eat. I'm not eating like I used to eat 6 years ago. I eat mainly fruit and vegetables. That's what I eat. Majority, occasionally fish and chicken. Uh, Diet is critical. So I'm glad we touched on that.
I'm glad you talked about it because it is important. I the food you eat can transform your body not only physically but internally. And a lot of times, how many times have we eaten something, we're like, oh my god, this don't feel so good, right? It was so heavy, the food was
Yeah.
heavy. But then when you eat foods that are light and are good and nutritious, you have energy, right? And so how is that affecting you when you're under treatments, when you're going under surgery, or do you have an amount of protein? So Matthew, it's extremely important, and I think more and more people need to look at the foods that they take into their body. Can food
I, I,
cure you? Can it cure you from cancer? No. But can it help you along your journey with cancer? 1000%.
I think the other thing that's important, I do a lot of international travel. I taught there in London for 4 years. The portions that we eat in America, in the last year, this has just started happening, but I now have a bowl that I put my vegetables, I measure. When I used to go out to dinner, we get such large portion. And you think California gives big, go to Texas and order a dinner. You've got a plate full of food. I still don't understand why we throw away so much food. So the portions become really important, that you just reduce those portions. Because the body doesn't need all of that food. Sometimes we're just eating it because we still hear mama say, "Boy, you better clean your plate." Well, that's not the thing to do today. You might want to get a smaller portion.
Extremely important. Extremely important. Matthew, I tell you, we need to touch more on that. And I think a lot of times people don't know how to eat. And I think maybe they want to change. They like to see different ways that they can, transform themselves or feel better, but they don't know how. And so being able to teach people on how to eat is extremely important, especially after a diagnosis. Would
Yeah,
you agree?
especially after the diagnosis. I mean, I feel so much better having lost that weight. And also, we talk about cancer, the medical part, but also there's a mathematical number on every pound what it means to your knees. Like every pound, I don't have the number right in front of me, but it's like 1 pound is like 15 pounds on your knees. And so your extremities, especially your knees, are really taking a beating, along with just that healthy. It's a totality when we talk about health and wellness. It's mental health, it's physical health, it's what we eat, it's the spirituality part of it all, it's relationships. It's not one aspect to it. It's again, I don't wait. PSA, my doctor told me just recently, yeah, come back in a year. Well, this blood labs all over. I go every quarter. I pay my $110 and I get my results. Yeah, I don't want to wait a year.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm to the extreme, but I I'm grateful that I think my life is worth more than $110.
That part, Matthew. And if you just listen to what Matthew just said, and that's what being an advocate for your life is, you know, and it's not necessarily that the physician was wrong about every year, but if you feel that you need to have your checkups a little bit sooner, then you are in control of that. You're the advocate for yourself. And so I love that, Matthew, that you talked about, hey, you get this every quarter. And it
Yeah.
not only does it gives you the results, but it also, would you say it gives you peace of mind?
I was just thinking it gives me an emotional peace of mind of knowing I'm okay. Uh, that you can't put a value to that, but peace of mind is just in life, period. Going through this whole cancer experience, uh, peace of mind and just continence and just being happy and joy. I'm fortunate. Almost every night before we go to bed, my wife and we watch TV and we laugh. Almost every night before we go to bed, we have laughter. And before cancer, I didn't have that. I didn't have and understand that importance of just laughter. Uh, just, it might seem like, laughter, but it changes your life in a positive way. I always say cancer, in a crazy way, has been the best thing ever happened to me. I'm happier in almost every aspect of my life.
Yeah.
I'm flourishing in almost every aspect of my life. You would think it would be just the opposite, but for me, it's really has changed me in a positive way. I'm a better man. I'm a better husband. Uh, that those are the changes for me.
Man, I love that, Matthew. You are a man who have seen a lot. You have done a lot. And for you to sit here and say, you know what, this thing, this cancer has brought a different perspective to me that now I love being a husband. I love laughing. I love the little things. I love a sunset. And it helps us to appreciate. It's not about chasing all the time.
Right.
It's about being in the moment and appreciating what you have in life.
And I call it looking out the window. When you can just stand there and look out the window and be at peace and still. I have to tell you a quick story how looking out the window, there's this amazing, successful music producer that I won't name, but uh, this guy, he doesn't do emails, he doesn't fly on an airplane, he doesn't do any of that. So I heard that Sony was paying him like some ridiculous millions of dollars. And I said to the head of Sony one day, uh, Columbia Records, I was like, I don't understand this guy. He doesn't travel, he doesn't any of this stuff. Why do you pay him so much money? And he looked at me and he says, Matthew, I pay him to look out the window.
Mm.
It took me about 3 years to understand what that really meant.
Mm.
Because here this guy is tremendously successful. And his success is because he connects with life. He's looking out of the window and all these creative moments comes up for him.
Yeah.
And sometimes creative moments for us is living. It's just simply looking out of the window and being still. So I use that a lot. My talks and speeches about the power of looking out the window.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Matthew, you have so much knowledge that you're able to teach. And how much more meaning does that have when you have a diagnosis and you understand the power of wanting to live in life and then being able to give examples the way you have? It's priceless to me.
Yeah, but what you do also, Kenny, is priceless because you're saving lives. I mean, we can't put a price or a value to some way, somehow. Our conversation hopefully will save a life. That somebody will listen today and say, they're right. I'm gonna go get tested. And
Yeah.
and that is so meaningful
Yeah.
to save a life. I mean, the power of that and the gratitude of that. I just can't tell you how it makes me feel to know that hopefully I'm doing something that saves somebody's life. And I've done things that made people dance and made people have joy in music, but and occasionally we've saved lives, like the example I gave. But what you and I and others are doing, that commitment that's the healthcare physicians and all the people that work in the medical field make every day to save a life. It's powerful,
Mm. That it's important, Matthew, and I'm so glad you're talking about it for several reasons. One, it's difficult, right? I mean, we've seen so many people that don't want to talk about it because they don't want to be treated differently, maybe. Two, they don't want people to look at them differently,
man. Hmm.
right? And we were surprised when we heard about the Black Panther Chad when he was diagnosed because we were like, no one knew, right? He
Right,
he kept that close to the chest, but he didn't want to. Maybe it was his roles. Maybe that he didn't want someone not to give him a role. So all of the things that come about a reason why we don't talk. And then the second thing, Matthew, is that we have the men don't want to talk about it, right? We
right,
internalize it, right? So
right.
for you to be able to say, hey, no, I need to look for a team. No, I need to be able to speak about it. Where does that come from?
Well, I've always been there. I've always been someone who wanted to educate. I've been a college professor for 20 plus years. I've always been someone who wanted to motivate. That's part of leadership, is motivating and inspiring. Those are the three things that I'm all about: inspiring, motivating, and educating. And so it was natural for me to want to talk about it, to look, I'll never forget. Fortunately, I was able to co-write the song Survivor by Destiny's Child. And I never forget, back then you had fan mail. We had a ton of fan mail. The ladies were out working and they didn't read it. I did. And I never forget reading this letter. This woman said, I was literally in the bathtub, had drawn the water, had the razor blade ready to cut my wrist because she had been diagnosed with cancer. And the radio she had playing in the kitchen, the song Survivor came, and it saved her life. And, I just don't take those opportunities to save a life for granted. And if I can speak and do what we're doing now and spread awareness, spread hope, uh, and knowledge about this disease, because the thing about cancer, I was just talking about this yesterday. One thing we have to understand here is cancer, unlike some diseases, in its early stages, there's no pain. There's no pain associated. And so this is growing inside of us. And we've been conditioned since slavery that it's got to hurt. And then we go to the doctor. Well, this thing is a little different. And that's why early diagnosis and early detection is so important. When you're talking about anything micro calcifications, you can't see that unless you get an X-ray, or MRI.
Sure.
These exams are critically important on a routine basis.
Yes. You know, you touched on it. Especially in the minority community, it's not going to the doctor is not the first choice. A lot of times, you don't know. I mean, and rightfully so. There's a lot of things that has happened by going to the doctor in the past. We know a lot of things in the minority community being injected with different things like that. So there's a fear. But as you talked about, early detection is key to survival. So I love that you're talking about. I love that you're an advocate for that. I mean, I know that you're a public speaker. Is that correct? You go
That's
around.
right. I speak all over the world. I enjoy it. I talk a lot about health and wellness, a whole lot about entrepreneurship, because I think we've got to go back to owning and having, assets. I talk a lot about, the music industry, obviously, uh, but also about the DNA of achievers. When I wrote that book, The DNA of Achievers, I didn't even know what DNA from a medical standpoint meant. It's interesting that I came up out of nowhere with the title, The DNA of Achievers.
Yes.
But it's important that we know our family history and that we know our DNA, because I think today's medicine, that genetic testing is the first stage today. We used to say getting a mammogram or getting an MRI or X-ray, but now I think early, like in our 30s, getting a genetic test and understanding our family history, and that's so critically important.
Absolutely. And if you guys, if you've never had a genetic test, it's easy. Sometimes it's right, Matthew. It's like a swap of the mouth. They can
Yeah.
take that and take your saliva, and they can tell you everything about your history and what you have within your genes, and it's painless. So if you're out there and you're listening, look to Matthew. Go get a genetic testing. You can go to your local doctor. You can talk to them about it, and they can set that up.
Well, it's even easier than that. You can go to a website, just Google genetic tests. There's several companies that sell genetic tests. They mail it to you. You do the saliva sample, no pain. You mail it back, and within days you'll get the results of it. I'm the global ambassador for 23andMe, and the global ambassador for zero prostate cancer. These tests, a PSA test is just a 3-second blood test. I mean, these things are available for us today. We don't have to go through the way it was done 50 years ago. And you said about things that happened in the past. We've got to get over 50 years ago.
Mm.
We're in a whole different world. That would be like me still talking about a cassette tape. I mean, we've gone from a cassette tape to a CD, and now we stream. Like, why am I going to talk about my cassette tape jam 50 years ago? And I'm still talking about doggone cassette tape jam. Come on.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I love it, Matthew. I love to see your passion on these things, and it's important, especially when you can help someone, and save a life. And this is
Yeah.
what it's about. Listen, Matthew is a public speaker. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to MathewKnowles.com. You can find all the information. Is that correct, Matthew? Matthew.
That's right. That Matthew is with one T. It's a long story. My dad had two T's, but I don't know what happened.
What I want to ask you, what form of support from your family has been the most meaningful to you?
Well, for me, the support was more the reverse, making sure they were okay.
Mm.
Because again, when we start talking about genetics, that goes down kids to grandkids to great grandkids. Uh, and I'm fortunate that they are okay. But that was the most important thing for me, is making sure everybody in the family is okay. Uh, and for me, almost a duality in that my grandfather and my dad's fourth of his five brothers died of prostate cancer. On my mother's side, my grandmother's sister, we were able to go as far back as my grandmother's sister. My mother's only sister died of breast cancer, and her only two daughters. So, you know, having that family history, making sure they were okay, was the foremost thing for me, is that I
Sure.
supported them in that way.
For sure. For sure. You know, your role as a husband, when you think about it, how has this experience changed your role as a husband, as a father, going through something like this?
Well, it changes all of you as a husband, a father, a friend,
Mhm.
how you look at life in general.
Mhm.
Uh, because you know that it's one day at a time, as the saying is. And you begin to enjoy family, you enjoy friendship in a more meaningful way than you did before. Just being in that hospital environment, just that in itself, and seeing the effect that it has on caregivers. Now we think about ourselves, poor me, but it also, as you said, it affects family, it affects wives and husbands and those that have to ensure we get our medication on time. And, sometimes I'm a knucklehead and I forget, make sure you take your medicine. Those things become important, very important.
For sure. You know, I've talked to a number of guests, Matthew, and I'd love for you to chime in on this. You know, sometimes as we're going through uh, the cancer journey, we forget that the people around us, our spouse, our family, it's almost as if they have cancer too, because they're along with you on this journey, and it's it's taking a toll on them as well. Have you noticed that with when you were going through it?
Yeah, Kenny, but it's so important that we understand, and please listen to me, everyone listen. We impact, we have the power to impact what that journey looks like. Stage one journey is so different than stage four journey. And what's the difference? I'm going to say it over and over. Early detection determines stage one journey versus stage four, chemo and radiation therapy versus taking a pill a day. Wouldn't you much rather take a pill a day? I don't understand sometimes. Why would we rather that journey be stage four? So that's why it makes people uncomfortable. But for change, sometimes I have to make people uncomfortable and understand these stages of cancer and how that journey is and
Yes,
how that destination can be.
100%. We appreciate that. That dropping gems. Mr. Knowles is here dropping gems today, and you need to get checked out. And he's stressing this. It's important that you go and get checked, right? Because what you catch, especially cancer, the earlier you catch it, sometimes the better the prognosis, right? And so the outcome can be a lot different than maybe stage four. Stage four doesn't mean that it's over, but it's different. And so that's what he's stressing here. And I hope you understand those gems. You know, Matt, I do want to ask you this. Here's one of the things I thinking. What was a pivotal point of getting through this? I mean, obviously you're nervous in the first when you first get the diagnosis, but how did positivity, your mindset, how did you change going into that direction, or maybe the things you said to yourself or some things you just did on a daily basis that allowed you to see light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, I think, the time I spent with my therapist,
Mhm.
uh, again, the mental aspect of health and wellness was so important. I think asking questions of my healthcare team and not being uh, embarrassed to say, I don't know. Please explain this. Oh, you just said a word that was like 12 letters. What the hell does that mean? Uh, uh, Researching on my own and understanding all I could read and understand. And knowledge is power. And I think, you know, having that, having a wife that I could talk to and 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 totally be authentic and totally say, hey, I'm frightened. Uh, all of those things, I think, and when you meet someone else that's gone through this whole journey, hey, what was it like for you? What should I be aware of? All of those things become critically important because it's not the destination of this; it's the journey, as you said.
Yeah.
And it can be a rocky road, or it can be a road that you can overcome, live a healthy life, and strive and strive. And, you don't have to die with this today.
Yes. I love it. I love it, Matthew. You've definitely touched on so many different things, and we appreciate that. You know, as the listeners that are tuning in right now, what would you like them to walk away with? What gems would you feel that you would
Yeah.
like to tell them that they can walk away with?
Well, I think there's a number of things. I think, as men, uh, we have a tendency that we don't want to get help. We don't want to go to the doctor. Again, I go back to a lot of this is conditioned behavior that we were taught during slavery. I talk about this quite a bit with my friends, and I said, "Man, can you imagine as a slave telling a slave master, master, I'm sick today." Can you imagine if you told the slave master, "I'm sick today, I can't work"? You probably end up in a shed. He's with that whip, here's some change, maybe a rope. So we've been conditioned as men that we can't say uh, that I'm sick. Also, I'm gonna just say it. A lot of us, and as men, we're frightened of a needle.
Hmm.
I'm gonna just say it.
Yeah.
A lot of us want to get a PSA test because we don't want to. We're scared to get a blood test, man. Nobody wants to admit that, and we need the women in our lives to help encourage and push us to make sure we go to the doctor
Yeah.
on a routine basis. Uh, so those are the things, and to the men, go to zeroprostate.com. We'll give you all the support and knowledge and help you on the path of understanding prostate cancer and overcoming it. Information is out there for you. And there's a same for women with breast cancer. You could go to just Google this stuff. I always tell everyone, I used to tell my students, still do, there's two professors in the class. There's me and there's Professor Google. A lot of the stuff today, when something happens, I get a pain here, first thing I do is Google it and get some information. It's
Yeah.
right at our fingertips. And knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Let me tell you, thank you so much for that, dropping those gems. And listen, MathewKnowles.com. You can go there, plenty of information. Matthew, you'll catch him. He's a public speaker. He's always walking around, but you can also find him appreciating life. I hope you picked up on that. Appreciating the sunset, appreciating nature. These are the things that sometimes a cancer diagnosis can help you with sometimes, right? I mean, it gives you perspective. And
Right.
that's what Matthew was saying today. And I love that. I love that you have that perspective. I love that you are embodied as a family man, and that is a special thing. And so everyone listening out there, thank you so much. Matthew is giving you so many gems that you can walk away with. And Matthew, I appreciate you joining us here at All Talk Oncology. It's an absolute privilege and a pleasure. And I look forward to being able to talk to you more and more in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you. And as I tell all my listeners, you're not alone in this. We're in this together. This is Kenny Perkins, AKA your cancer guy. And until again, I'm out.
So stay connected with us on All Talk Oncology Cancer Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that, right? Wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's Apple, Spotify, make sure you subscribe and continue to spread that word, right? Engage in this because your engagement can help someone stay alive. And this is what we're talking about. So again, make sure you subscribe, hit that subscribe button. Again, this is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. Until again, I'm out.